Hey everyone, this is More Than Just Trucks, a podcast for gearheads, truckers, and anyone who wants to learn more about the trucking industry. This podcast is sponsored by Truck Country and Stoops-Freightliner. Come along with me as we dive deeper into what makes this $700 billion industry an essential part of all our lives. Here, we will interview industry leaders, educators, and more as we aim to inform the population on all things trucking. Hello and welcome to More Than Just Trucks podcast. I am your host, Ray Clark, and today we are shifting gears and it's a follow-up show for us, and actually did some video besides just the audio today with their recording from our last podcast. And I am honestly very stoked to have three ladies on our show today. And like I said, we're going to talk about the ladies in the industry. So Diesel Chicks. Let's do a quick intro. Today we have Melissa, Courtney, and Sevy. So you know what, Sevy, you're in my top left corner of my screen. So I'm going to start with you. Why don't you give the audience a little bit of an intro and say hello?
Hello, I'm Sevy. I have worked for the Stoops-Freightliner Anderson location for a year as of the 8th of this month. I did automotive for about 4 or 5 years prior to heavy duty diesel. I'm a biker as of a year or so ago. I just really enjoy fixing stuff and working on trucks. And long term, I'd like to open an all women's shop.
That'd be sweet.
Yeah, that'd be
awesome.
Cool. Well, let's have Courtney, because Melissa's jumped out and jumping back in again. So Courtney.
I am Courtney Sturman. I'm from North Chicago location. I actually am from Michigan. So I moved here, found out about truck country, and I've always liked working on stuff. Never got into diesel. I never thought I would be working on semis, but found out about the program and everything. I've been with the company for about a year and a half, I think. And I don't know, I just love it. I love the whole atmosphere and everything like that. And I just had a son, the first, my wife and I.
Oh, you're taking away I had all these bullet points.
So it's kind of been a crazy week. I'm at school actually this week. So it's been an interesting couple weeks, but
yeah, cool.
Back in it.
Nice. And Melissa, say hello to everybody. And Melissa has been having some computer issues.
Internet issues.
Well, when I try to join on the fucking computer, I can't hear you. So it's because when I do my podcast, I have it going through the headphones, which I do not have right now. So I'm trying to go into my Zoom right now and change that so I can join on my computer.
Okay.
Because my phone is lagging really bad. So awesome. I'm trying to fix that right now.
Oh, gotcha. So you're behind.
Yeah.
We've got your volume loud and clear, and everybody's done an intro. So if you want to just introduce yourself to everybody.
I am Melissa Petersman. I go by the Diesel Queen online. I started straight out of high school. I grew up around this stuff. My dad's a logger. I grew up around logging equipment and semis, diesel trucks, stuff like that. I took all of the welding classes, automotive classes, all that shit in high school. And then I went to WyoTech straight out of high school. And then out of WyoTech, I started at a truck dealership for like 3 months. They cut my hours a bunch and I had to move jobs. So I moved to a John Deere dealership, and I have been working for a John Deere dealership for the last 7 years now as a heavy equipment mechanic.
Awesome.
Yeah. So
are you the only female in that shop too?
I've worked with one other female before, but for the most part, yeah, I'm the only girl.
Yeah. Me too.
Yeah. And that's, company wide right now. We were just talking with Jolene here in my office, and there's like 2 others in one of our northern Wisconsin shops too. Yeah. So, and that's the purpose of this kind of podcast a little bit really is kind of let's talk about the challenges, the struggles, getting into the, I mean, like you, Melissa, it's kind of cool because there's a lot of similarities for myself. My dad had an excavating business, so tracks and tires, everything, heavy equipment. So me, I'm, for those of you that know me personally, I'm a whole whopping 5'3", and growing up, I wasn't much taller. Trust me.
He's really short.
And so, honestly, I mean, I can relate in struggles. I mean, lifting cylinders on an excavator is not easy to do. I mean, even if they're strapped and you swing them, brake drums on a truck and stuff. So, Courtney, I mean, we just had conversation, and you guys chime in whenever you want. Like I said, it's real loose talking about it, but I mean, the struggles that you guys are seeing, I mean, we talked about how differently you guys are wired. I mean, you're literally living in a man's world, which is in the mechanic side of it. I said, if you can't take a beating verbally, then you shouldn't be in the industry. Really,
you can't dish it out and take it, or vice versa. It's going to be hard. Like, it's funny because when I came into the shop, I was like, okay, I've worked with men like pretty much my whole life. Like, that's the kind of worker I am. I've always been hands-on and and get in the nitty gritty and, get in there and get my hands dirty. But I came here, I'm like, okay, knowing that I'm the only female, I'm like, great. All these guys are going to be like, blah, 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 there's a female in the shop. But it's funny because I walked in and I didn't pay attention to nobody. I flat out told them, I was like, if you're going to give me any type of, beef or anything like that, I'm like, I'm not going to take it. So that right there, I got the respect. And then once I started working there longer and they seen what I was here to do and they seen that I was a hard worker, they're like, okay, she's rolling in with us. And I got the respect. And that's every single person in that shop I get along with because of that. So that's huge for a female coming into, I feel like, an all male dominated shop.
So you had no tech school or anything, right?
I didn't have anything. I have 10, 12 years of experience on a dairy farm, and I was a landscaper, and I just worked on my own vehicles just to keep them running and stuff like that, and some tractors, but I've never worked on anything.
Yeah.
So
now, Sevy, did you say that you were at a tech school or a trade school?
No, I had no prior schooling in any type of automotive or mechanics related anything. It was something that I wanted to do. One of my high schools offered the J. Everett Light program, and they had the automotive repair and then welding and then I think body work. I ended up not being able to attend it, but aside from that, everything that I've learned has just been what I've learned over time. I didn't grow up in this kind of industry, whether it be work or family or friends or anything. I had an ex and his family was super into it. So they kind of gave me the initial insight and kind of fed the interest, but I mostly just branched off on my own and started learning as much as I could because I wanted to be self-sufficient. You know what I mean? I didn't want to have to rely on anybody for the repairs, to work on my car, to just know how to do the general mechanic type work. And then also I worked in a home remodeling company. So it was just kind of a accumulation of wanting to learn on my own, as well as just making sure that I could do it on my own. You know what I mean? So yeah, I haven't gotten any schooling until now, attending the Stoops Training Academy program. So,
okay. And Melissa, holy cow, in Wild Tech, I mean, you had to have some struggles, really. I mean, I know now there still aren't a lot of ladies going through tech schools.
I mean, honestly, I'm going to be flat honest with you. I have had it is a very, very rare occurrence that I run into an issue because I'm a woman. Rare. And WyoTech is the same. I really didn't have any issues. I tried hard and I showed up and I did well just because I showed up and I tried. And all the shops I've worked in, I think I've ran into 2 issues, maybe over the last 7 years because I'm a woman. As far as the shit talking goes, I learned really fast that everybody shit talks everybody in the shop. So, that kind of is what it is. And I grew up around loggers. So that shit is like the shit I grew up around. So it really never bothered me too much. It really didn't. And I've had very, very few problems because I'm a woman. I mean, everybody, I get the same question all the time. They're like, oh my God, you're so small. How do you work on heavy equipment? Like the button on the crane works great.
Exactly.
Well, you got to think about it. Most of it you have to do because it is heavy. You're not going to go up and lift the cylinder head off of the truck. Like you're just not. For a big
the 215-pound buff guy is not doing that.
Yeah, exactly. That's right. So, I mean, and so that was one of my things. Like, what are the struggles? Like everybody, same thing. They prompt the question of, well, all these big components and stuff. I'm like, look, I'm 5'3". I think nothing of standing on top of it. Same as you, right? Flick. And down comes the crane and hook it into the head picker and you're off with the cylinder head or a ram or whatever. I mean, it's like we have shop tools to do all that stuff. So when it comes to that, so all the theory of the ladies that like want to steer in this direction, and that's going to be one of my questions is, how do we get more ladies interested in this? Because for me, I'm telling you, I love it because I've had either lady techs or service advisors that are rock stars. You guys pay attention to detail.
Yeah, you were saying that.
It's just, I mean, and honestly, I don't want to say you don't back talk, but when usually we give orders, or, hey, we need this done. It's not like I've had literally texts that say, I'm not doing that lube oil filter. I'm a certified tech. Well, it's like, come on, look, just.
I've seen a girl do that too. That is not just a guy thing. I've seen women do that too.
Yeah, it's not mutually exclusive.
The girl that I started working with was in the crane department of the dealership that I worked at. And she was just like that. She was too good for some jobs. She didn't want to do things that she didn't feel like were good enough for her. So long story short, she didn't last long. But I mean, you can't have that kind of attitude, man or woman. You can't have that attitude.
Yeah. So out of the three, what is the biggest struggle that you guys feel right now coming in the industry? Is there one? If it was one, what would you say it is?
Coming into the industry?
Or being in the industry?
Personally, because what I've seen a lot is that when it comes to women who don't have any knowledge in relation to whether it's heavy trucking or automotive or just anything trades related, a lot of it is like, it seems too hard. I'm not strong enough. There's a lot that I just don't know how to do. It doesn't make sense to me. And like, for me personally, it's never been that, it's never been anything about like the strength that you need or like just the weight of everything in general. It's more so about there is a lot to learn in a short amount of time to be able to do bigger things. So I guess for me, the struggle initially was just taking in all the information at once.
The mind concept.
Yeah. And like, it's not that it's necessarily hard. It's just that there are a lot of it is that there's so many different names for so many different components. And then you've got the slang term of those names, the shortened versions, the abbreviated in like the parts catalogs and stuff. So it's really just learning more, honestly, the names. That's the names of the parts. That was always my biggest struggle. But aside from that, it's less about the physicality of it and more so just the information storing.
Yeah.
So.
And Melissa, you're capstone, correct?
I have a bunch of capstones.
So for those of you that don't know what capstone is, that's like John Deere's expert level technicians. So how many you got right now?
I have backhoe, skid steer, mid-size excavator, grader, Cummins QSX, and then the mini X's. And then I have a bunch of the other like basic certification. I have the engine capstone, which they just came out with recently, because normal capstones don't ever cover engines. They just cover, the electrical and the hydraulics and stuff like that of the machine. So John Deere came out with a new course that is engine capstone, and I have that one too. Then obviously they have all the like little, after treatment and hydraulics, electrical, which they've redone 8,000 times in the 7 years I've been there.
Oh, don't worry. Freightliner does the same. So see, ladies, there's definite room to grow. So FYI, Melissa, both Sevy and Courtney are in our training program. So our training program really takes the kind of the same thing that John Deere does. It's a paid training type program that brings you from a system to a pro up to an expert level technician. So when they get out of here and their 3-year agreement term that we got set up in the training path, they'll be expert certified in the chassis side and can move on to the engine side. So cool, neat fact. And I looked it up here. Did you guys know that Queen Elizabeth II was a diesel mechanic back in World War II?
And a driver.
And a driver.
Yeah.
So
I didn't know about it either. I'm like, that's sweet.
So the start of it, there was ladies way back when, and I thought that was pretty cool when I found that. You know, kind of give a little history on that. But so Melissa, with your view on the schools, you've been through it in WyoTech, right? So how do we get somebody involved from a female's perspective, right? How do you go to high school and help recruit and say, hey, ladies, this isn't just for men. I'm here to tell you that we can do it.
I mean, first and foremost, we need to be recruiting everybody, right? This industry needs bodies. But as far as women go, I think going to high schools and talking to 500 people doesn't really do that much. I have seen companies do that. I've done it before. You might have 5 people paying attention to you, maybe. What I think the high schools and places like that are lacking to try and get women into the trades in general is, where are the electives for that in high school?
True.
They're gone.
True.
When I went to high school, you were required to take an automotive class to graduate.
All engines?
Yeah.
You were required to take automotive, and you were also required to take either woodworking or welding of one semester.
Yeah.
So you were forced to go. Like I've told this story twice on my own podcast. I'm in a welding class in high school, and there's the straight up gothic Lincoln Park chick with white hair, black makeup, tall boot thing, fishnet, whole 9 yards, right? Sitting in a welding class, running welding beads on a frickin' arc welder.
Yeah, like
Do you think she would have picked that class if it wasn't required?
Yeah.
Hell no. But she figured it, she had to take it, so that's what she took, and she was actually pretty decent at it. I don't think she did anything with it, but at least it gives them the chance early on to decide whether or not this is something that they would want to do or not.
Yeah, and I'll agree with you like wholeheartedly. I have had so to give you guys an idea how my passion is with the industry, Courtney knows my son's name, but for those of you that don't, my son's name is Diesel, and it's straight up on the paperwork. So he has to live up to it. But to your point, right? I mean, I've gone as far as, and I've said this same thing on previous shows, is I've gone back into 6th grade classes, just small 6th grade classes. And they're like, why would you get into a 6th grade class? And I'm like, because you got to plant that seed. You got to give them some idea. And they're like, well, they're going to forget about it by the time they're a senior. I said, okay, they may be doing that, but it doesn't mean you have to forget about them. Right. So go back and visit them again in 7th, 8th, 9th grade and just stay in front of them. But you're right. I mean, woodworking, metal shop, small engine, automotive, all of that is gone in our schools now. When was the last time you talked to let's say a parent, and they changed their own tire if they had a flat tire, or changed their own oil and had their son or daughter beside them saying, okay, hey, this is how you do it? I guarantee.
I grew up in Wyoming, so we all did that, but as far as the rest of the world goes, probably not. Yeah.
I mean, it's a crazy part there that I think that does that our society is just gone astray from that. So Melissa, for you, what's the big thing that really appeals to it in the industry or the job itself, being a technician? So male, female aside, what's the biggest appealing factor for you to be a technician?
For me, I like the challenge, and I've always just had a passion for it. I love ripping shit apart and I love putting it back together and I love running the machines afterwards, which is part of the reason why I love working in construction or in the construction dealerships, because when you were done doing an engine on an excavator, guess what? You got to spend 20 minutes to half an hour outside digging in the dirt pile. I loved all of it. And to me, it's the challenge. It's very rewarding work for me. And it's just something that I truly have a passion for.
Sevy, what appeals to you?
Honestly, I think it's the pride that I feel as a woman in the industry, because, growing up, it's been a lot of, oh, women don't know how to do that. Are you sure you're strong enough? Are you sure you're capable? It's as a woman who initially didn't understand anything, and I was in a place where I could have information just blown right over my head while having my car worked on because I didn't know. It makes me feel good for myself to know that I can do it, and to give other women kind of a visual as like, yeah, you totally can do it too. It's pride for me and for other women who may be interested in it.
Cool. Courtney, what's your?
I kind of feel the same way. Like I don't know, you see a problem and it constantly keeps your mind going. Like I don't get bored with it. Because like if I know something or if I've worked in something and I know it like the back of my hand, like I can do it in my sleep, I'm gonna get bored with it. And then I'm gonna look for that next, like, okay, that's boring. I need to keep something that's gonna keep me. Every day is gonna be different. Like, yeah, some of the Freightliners obviously are gonna be the same, but you're gonna have a different problem every day. And it could be harder, it could be easier. Like every time I try and figure something out on my own, I don't need no help. I'm like, oh, sweet. Like, that was awesome. I need more of that. So I think that's what and obviously the sound zone, like who doesn't love the sound,
I think in general in the technician world.
Yeah.
Let me guess, Melissa, you're probably a delete EGR emissions, straight pipe kind of girl, aren't you?
Okay. On my personal stuff and pickups, yes. I had a fucking nightmare. I had a nightmare of an excavator at work for a few months with a man that decided he wanted to delete his excavator.
Ooh.
Which he wasn't even supposed to bring it into the dealership in the first place. Did it sound cool? Fuck yeah. Did it roll coal like a freight train? Absolutely. I loved that thing. But trying to work on especially electrical problems on that excavator, nightmare. Freaking nightmare. Yeah. And the only people that can touch those machines when it comes down to the electronic side of it, because he brought it in with codes and it's got a code for 2 sensors that are unplugged.
Yeah.
That's part of the tune that it took me months to convince that guy that the guy that tuned it needs to go in there and fix it, because I got codes for shit that they intentionally unplugged. So I can't do anything, because if I start reprogramming your ECU, guess what? Bad things happen, because you don't have any of that shit on your machine anymore, and it's going to freak out.
Well, we could do a side podcast on just deletes and emissions, and because I'm in the same boat, right?
Customer complaints.
And customer complaints where they come in afterwards. Because I'm in the same boat, right? It is kind of cool. They sound great. I love it when they roll coal a little bit, but I also on the technical side, I know how much unburnt fuel that is. I know what it's doing out there. And then these guys that do like those poor delete jobs, it's like, come on. I mean, if you're going to do it, take it to somebody that can like be really good with deletes if you're going to do it at all.
Or be prepared to not take it to a dealership. That's my thing. Delete whatever you want. Just don't expect a dealership to be able to touch it. Like there's a reason all of the trucks that I own are 2005 and older.
Yes.
All of my trucks.
Yes.
All of them. They don't have emissions. I can put tuners and all kinds of go fast parts on it, and it doesn't fucking matter. And the state I live in doesn't have emissions, so it's perfect.
There you go.
Well, I'm a very new, proud owner of a 1986 K5, and my son just finished an 87 K10, so he's in the same boat. Like, I don't want none of that emission stuff. So, pop quiz question.
Oh,
Who do you guys look up to? Who's like your go-to person that you look up to?
Like at work?
like in general, and maybe work, life, or career?
Work wise, I look up to my coach. We've gotten really close I think it's because he has 4 daughters, and like he's like,
No, he's got some relatable things.
Yeah,
now.
he's like, "Oh, with my daughter, like my attitude and stuff like that," and he's literally taking me under his wing
Nice.
because I came in knowing nothing about it, So
Yeah.
I kind of look up to him, but
Okay, Sevy, who do you look up to?
Honestly, probably my Oma, just because she's always kind of been that badass in the family. She was I don't want to necessarily say outcast, but she was kind of always the one that stuck out a little more of the norm, because my great-grandmother grew up in the very modern time, and my Oma was very much, I'm my own person. She's always been really about like the guns. She's a biker. She's always been really supportive of anything that I do, regardless of if it's work-related, school-related, life-related. She's just very much like, do what makes you happy and whatever, you want to do. And so she's really the one that's kind of given me the drive, because she's also, the kind of person who's going to take care of things on her own. She doesn't want to have to rely on anyone if she doesn't have to. So when it comes down to getting stuff done, she's the one. So
Cool. So, and from what I've seen so far, you're kind of that same mentality. You're going to get it done.
you kind of have to be. And
Yeah.
you really do. You just kind of have to be like that.
Who's your look up to, Melissa?
My dad a lot. And there's also this lady named Miranda Carter that I have been very good friends with for the last probably 6 years. She's also a heavy equipment mechanic. She's got about 2 years of experience on me. And she started it with no experience. Like her grandma was a mechanic, but she started in this with nothing. And she was a single mom and she was having a hard time making it. And she just walked into a shop and asked for a job. And now she's worked her way all the way up to a service manager for Caterpillar.
Awesome.
Yeah.
That's a
She's a hard worker too. She doesn't try to shortcut anything. She doesn't try to get her way on anything. She just grinds through everything and she grinds her way to the top. And I have a lot of respect for that woman.
Yeah.
Dog.
That is awesome. So, okay. So I definitely, and we talked about this earlier too, but for the 3 of you on the show, you guys are all are wired differently. We talked about how this was like, wired differently than a typical lady. But so I'm a music guy, and Jim prompted this question here before, but what's your jam song? What do you guys like? What makes you start moving around? Like you're cranking wrenches, you got cordless tools, or you got impacts going. What makes you start bouncing around in the shop? Melissa, what's your go-to song?
I mean, I don't necessarily have a song, but I listen, especially in the shop, I listen to heavy metal and heavy rock, shit like that. I got an entire workout and work playlist full of heavy metal, pretty much.
Okay. Sevy?
it really kind of depends for me, because as a whole, my music taste is all over the board. It really just kind of depends, because if I'm in a music mood, it may be some like 90s to thousands rock. Other times it's like EDM. Other times it's heavy metal. But as of late, I just listen to a lot of podcasts because it kind of allows me to centralize my focus. If I get to bebopping too hard, I'm going to start singing and everybody's going to look at me weird. And I'm like,
just do it. Just sing. I do it all the time.
Oh, yeah, I do it anyway.
Used to the fact that I suck at singing and they just get over it.
Yeah.
Oh, I do it anyway. I have a great time with it. It really just kind of depends. It depends on, if it's a rainy day, if it's a hot day, if I'm frustrated about something, it just depends. I don't really have one or the other.
Courtney, what cranks you up?
I mean, and we have a pretty good genre of music, but at our shop, we're having issues with people playing their music and the type of music. So like if I do play anything, it's rock, it's classic rock, because we have a couple of senior techs that'll start getting a little upset if it's something they don't like. So I usually just kind of keep it clean and put classic rock on, or I'll throw country on. It just obviously depends. If I'm mad, then there's hard rock on. I don't want to be talked with. I'm just let me do me. But
I'm an AC/DC guy. I was shooting paint on my son's old 87, and AC/DC come on, and the head started going, and I think that's why I had to do another coat of paint when I got done. I don't think I didn't have it square, not at all. So what do we do from here? Like we talked about, you talked about getting into schools and recruiting. I mean, how do we just try to like get more ladies into this industry? Because it's, as the three of you guys are proof in the pudding, it can be done with no problem. And I mean, like you said, recruiting wise, schools have given up the elective. So getting it back in, I think Jenny said it best on the first show we had here just before this, or the past show, was education, meaning educating the public, right? Educating, I think, everybody, and it's trying to get the word out there.
It's advertisement. And like, if you see like all three of us, obviously you have advertisement and obviously keep up with, you know, the people who are in the industry. Like, you know, she came from here and she's here now, and like achievements and stuff like that, I think will be like, oh wow, okay, she came into it, no, I think I can do that, like that type of thing.
Yeah,
but it's just going to be advertisement because people don't know about it.
I mean, like I said, looking at Melissa's kind of her path right now in your career, Melissa, right? I mean, did you ever think you'd be where you're at today?
No, leaving the industry to do this was an insanely hard decision. And I still don't necessarily feel like I was ready to leave the industry. But with I'm trying to have a family, and I'm trying to start my own business. I want to run my own shop. It was the best decision for me to make right now.
Yeah.
But it's, you know, as far as advertising goes, we have the world's biggest advertisement at the tip of our fingertips. It's called freaking Facebook and TikTok and Instagram.
Yeah.
Those apps make millions and millions and millions of dollars on views. Your views are what they sell to other companies for advertisement. So why not use that? You know how many message requests I get in my inbox every day from women asking about wanting to be in the industry, or not even women, men too, asking about how did I get into it, or like, what can they do, or what trade school I went into. And that to me is a great starting point, because it's not just the high school kids we want.
Right.
Yeah.
It's not just them. There's an entire group of people from the ages 19 to 30 that either dropped out of college, couldn't afford college, working minimum wage, barely scraping by for whatever reasons they have, that need to see like, hey, this industry, this is not the low income job that, you know, low level people do. This, you can make this is a career that you can make a lot of money in. And I think through social media, maybe not primarily social media, but social media can help, you know, shed light onto what this industry really is and what you can actually accomplish in this industry.
Well, it's such a big platform, and I'll say platforms, right? To your point, right? I mean, like you said, in 30 seconds, in just Facebook alone or TikTok, how many people have they reached out to, right? I mean, in just 30 seconds, there's probably thousands or millions on that platform. So it is crazy that it's like that. So I want to recap a little bit and really wrap things up. And I do appreciate, has anybody got anything that they want to add to the show at all?
I did want to say one thing just in regards to you saying that you've gone into like 6th grade classrooms and stuff like that. I actually wanted to say that, like, I think a really good way to encourage more people, but if specifically like a female-based audience, is if you were to take women and put them in those classrooms, because it is good to plant that seed. You know what I mean? My sister is 14 now, and she had no idea how to do any of this stuff. And when I started going into it, I kind of started essentially taking her with me. So at a younger age than I ever got, I planted that seed for her. So if it gets them inspired to see women at a young age doing something that they've always been told women can't do, it kind of encourages them and pushes them going forward.
Right.
So
Okay. And to your point, Melissa, the industry itself, you've seen the stats, you help voice the stats. I mean, it's a killer right now for us to find diesel technicians in the industry wide, whether it's
jobs will hire a warm body at this point.
Yeah. But that's the sad thing, is that we've gotten to that point that we just want to hire, because to your point, right? It's not the nuts and bolts. It's not the busting knuckle, greasy, grimy job anymore.
It is, but that's not all it is either.
Yeah, exactly. It's not all it. I mean, to get to your level as a capstone technician, to get to a professional or expert level technician, it takes skill and knowledge to get there.
You gotta have drive for it.
Yeah. This isn't just like, oh, hey, I unbolted that and I bolted it back up, because the technology today from trucks and equipment in our industry are just crazy.
Anybody could be a parts changer. Anybody could look at this part like, oh, okay, it comes out, let me put another one in.
Right.
Yeah.
But knowing that, why did the part fail? I mean, to me, that's
knowing the system is the biggest part of being a mechanic, because knowing the system is a foundation for everything. It's a foundation for diagnostics. It's a foundation for teardown. It's a foundations for install and assembly. If you have no freaking idea how the system works or how it's supposed to work correctly, then you lose the foundation for everything else in the job.
Hey, can you come into one of the classes and preach that in the very beginning? Because we have so many.
Preferably my class.
Oh, so many guys come in and they're like, oh, I just want to work on engines. It's like, you don't even know how the truck works first.
Yeah, but how old are they?
Typically 18 to 20.
Yeah, we're all stupid at that age.
I think
we all just want to rip shit apart and put it back together. That's all of us. It's once you get into the industry and then you're like, the first few times you really start getting your ass kicked in a diagnostic because you don't actually understand how it's supposed to work, or you don't understand the fundamentals of it. That's finally when the wheels start turning and it starts to click for some of these people that like, hey, maybe I need to know how this works. Yeah. I've always been a nerd. So I've always wanted to read on things. I've always liked reading that. I've always liked to learn it. I've always been the nerd that way. But there's a lot of mechanics, and especially younger ones, are like,
oh yeah,
the whole like meme, like, that's a lot of words, too bad I'm not reading them. That's like a lot of mechanics. So they'll figure it out.
Yeah,
they'll figure it out.
So when the instructors say read the manual, it means something behind it besides just thinking that they're wasting time.
There's a lot of info, especially on these Freightliners and like even the new truck, the all electric trucks that are coming out. Like, you're gonna have to look at that stuff, be able to just even figure out how all that's gonna work now.
Yeah, and we're gonna start living in the world of electric trucks and equipment. Yeah. I've heard John Deere.
Don't say equipment. Don't say that.
Oh, I've already heard John Deere's got a kind of a hybrid. What I've heard.
Yes. Yeah, it's a diesel. It's a diesel electric, but it still has a diesel motor in it. So
yeah. That's what I said. I talked to a guy that came here.
I'm fine with diesel electric. I'm cool with that.
Yeah. So last question for me, I guess, to all of you guys. So like, how do we keep pushing this? I mean, we talked about, I guess, the education, the marketing. Is there anything bigger that where's the low hanging fruit to just in general, like to your point, Melissa? I mean, there is a need, whether male or female. What's the low hanging fruit that we can really hit on if we had to?
Are you asking me or everybody?
You. We'll start with you.
Okay. And that's a hard one, because you can't force people to want to work. You can't force people. You know, when you see the hours that a typical diesel mechanic works, and these kids are seeing 50 to 60 hour weeks, they're like, I don't think so. So it's hard to convince kids and people that, hey, this is worth it. And I think a lot of that is showing them that, hey, this is a respectable job. People respect this as a career. And not only that, but you can make a lot of money. I've owned a house since I was 19. because of this industry. So I bought 3 houses now, and I'm not saying I'm like super, super rich, but the money that you can make in this industry is great. You never start at minimum wage. You're always well above minimum wage. At least that's my experience.
Yeah.
So trying to show these kids that like, hey, this is a very lucrative business to be in, especially if you're willing to work the overtime, you can make killer freaking money in this industry.
Yep. Courtney, what do you think? If there was one,
I think maybe try like even doing more podcasts or something. Like we do the open houses here at our training facility, like open to the public. Like I think it just comes down to the advertisement, honestly, because if people don't know about it, or yeah, everyone knows about a diesel mechanic, but they don't really know the ins and outs of it, like what it really takes to, you know what I mean? So if you try and explain that better and give people like a piece of that, that'll help. But advertisement's probably the best way. Podcasts, or like she said, Facebook and stuff like that.
Sevy, what do you think?
I think a lot of representation, you know what I mean? Seeing more, like towards the women's side of it, being able to see more women, you know, represented. And also the other thing too is that I feel like a lot of the time when you hear diesel mechanic, your first thought is semis. Because every time I've told somebody like, yeah, I work, I'm a heavy diesel mechanic, they're like, oh, so you work on semis and stuff. And I'm like, yeah, but also school buses and fire trucks. And like, there's the heavy equipment side of it too. You know, there's a lot more to it than just semis. There's so many different opportunities and so many different abilities that you can really get your hands in there. And so it's knowing that it's more than just semis, and also just having the representation of women in the industry as a whole, highlighting the women that are already in there to show other women that it's not really an entirely a man's world anymore. It's everybody's world if you want to do it.
Yeah.
It's doable.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, all right. Well, wanted to thank you ladies for being on today's show and podcast, because like I said, I thought it was pretty good. I'll get you guys the link, but thank you to our sponsor, Truck Country Stoops-Freightliner. We are one of the largest family-owned and operated Freightliner dealerships in the U.S. today. So again, thanks for More Than Just Trucks podcast, and we'll talk with you guys from here on out. See you on the next show.
Nice meeting you guys.
Nice meeting you guys.